Hi, I am Abby with the Heirloom Farmer, and today I'm going to show you the bit of chaos that is our garden, explain a little bit of the background story behind what's going on, and what we are planning to do, all in hopes of inspiring you in your gardening, homesteading, or farming journey in making the most of what you have. So, here we go. First thing is the clover. So we have been frost seeding clover in all of our pathways to reduce the amount of mowing that we need to do so that things still look nice even when we can't keep them mown, and for the pollinators. And if you look here, there's a honeybee, there's a honeybee, there's a honeybee, there's a honeybee, there's probably a dozen honeybees in this 6-foot square space. They are just all over this clover, and even with our recent drought, it was green and blooming and awesome. So planting clover in our pathways is something that we're going to continue. I seeded it in here early this spring. It's starting to catch up there and will fill in. So that is something I highly recommend you do if possible, is create green living pathways. And it definitely has reduced the mowing. All right. So this area was a cornfield about 3 years ago, and it was a cornfield forever and ever and ever. We started changing things about 3 years ago, and we were working on turning this into a market garden. Our goals changed a little bit, but we were still working on turning it into a garden space. But we started running into some challenges as we were setting up kind of your traditional market garden space and rows. I will say part of that was the limited amount of time we had to devote. We have full-time jobs, we have other farming adventures. So this was really just a side part of what we do. So had we had more time, may have been different, but we ran into a ton of weed pressure, a ton of problems with the soil. So it's really changed how we do things. But this front area here had really poor drainage, a lot of water puddling, just not great. And so we've started adding these raised beds. We currently have 4 of them, and we really like them. I really like raised beds. That is a ladybug larva. That's a good guy. They eat tons and tons of aphids in that stage. I like growing in raised beds. I like the control we have over the soil in the raised beds. I like cattle panel trellises. So many great benefits to raised beds. One of the reasons we chose to do the raised beds was because of the poor drainage, because of the poor soil. This was a way for us to improve our growing space really rapidly. Now, I don't plan to do all of our gardening in raised beds, but I do want to continue adding raised beds across here. And another reason that we want to do that is because we want to also be able to teach other people different gardening methods, one of which being raised beds. I do want to show you, and I could talk forever just about raised beds, so I will have to do a video about raised beds. But while we're here, I noticed something I want to show you. So I planted a row of cabbage, and just for fun, I did every other green and purple. But what I've been able to notice through this is the green, by far, have had the most pest pressure. And it's all of them. All of the green compared to the purple. So totally different. I have pulled a few cabbage worms off of the purple, but by far they've mostly been on the green. And I mean, you can just tell looking at them, the difference. Now, had I only planted purple, I don't know if that would be the case, but because there's purple and green, the pests seem to primarily be going after the green, and the purple look awesome. So just something really cool that I noticed. And our garlic is doing so great in the raised beds that we mulched heavily. Now, the next area of the garden, we were really struggling with thistles. And I'm going to kind of skip over here and then I'll jump back and show you. So this is what we were dealing with. All of these crazy thistles. And last year by July, they were just so far ahead of us that I could not walk through the garden. Thistles were crazy. So we've been doing a couple of things to combat the thistles. Kind of, you know, hopefully you'll work a little bit smarter, not just in frustration with the thistles. So following what's commonly known as the Ruth Stout method, we put down a really deep mulch here. By deep, I mean there's probably 6 to 8 inches of mulch. So far, it's been really working great against the weeds. We have had some slug issues. You can see here the peppers are really struggling because of slug damage. So that's something that we're working to address. But the potatoes, even though they've got a lot of flea beetle damage, the potatoes, I really like how we did them in this method. There's another ladybug larva. So to plant these potatoes, we simply pulled the mulch back, put the potato on the surface of the soil, covered it back over with the mulch, and then they grew right up through it. Still, the soil under here is not that great, so I think that's why the potatoes are not as nice as they could be, and they're struggling with flea beetles. But this method has been working really well so far for the potatoes. That is a ladybug in pupal stage. So don't panic if you see those. That is not a cucumber or a Colorado potato beetle. That's a ladybug. That's a good guy. So I really like the potatoes that we did this way. We have tomatoes here on a cattle panel trellis. Again, they're still struggling a little bit because we're still really working on improving our soil here. But we're going to continue mulching across here. We added some compost, and we're going to continue adding organic matter to improve the soil in this area and to combat the thistles. We also want to be able to show and teach about this method of gardening and how you can reduce weeding and you can reduce a lot of labor by using this gardening method. So watch for future videos on how this garden grows this season and in the future, how it continues to change. Now in this section here, we mowed the thistles and we're getting ready to put plastic across here, which we will leave for a season to, again, get rid of those thistles. That is kind of what I have found is what we have to do to really get rid of the thistles. But I want to show you this area here is what I'm calling our Insectory. And it is an area we've had planted in echinacea and yarrow for 3 years. And I believe this is one of the reasons that we're seeing so many ladybugs. So we've left these, we left the plant material over winter. Actually, we never remove it. As you can see, it's still there. And it's just covered with ladybugs in all stages. which is super, super awesome because we don't use pesticides in our garden. We love to see the beneficial insects. So this is definitely an area we're gonna keep, and we're gonna expand down along here as we get rid of those thistles. And we're gonna add in some more plants, but definitely the echinacea and the yarrow are things that we are going to continue. I mean, there's just insects all over here. Not all of them are technically beneficials, but a lot of them are. There's a hoverfly. I don't know if you can see. Actually, there's 2 hoverflies there. Their larvae will eat aphids as well. And I thought maybe these were soldier beetles or soldier bugs, but I'm actually not sure. I think they're just a field, some type of field beetle. If you know, let me know. But there's definitely a lot of those. There's a ladybug. So these are definitely very valuable plants to our garden and a huge part of our pest management. All right, so we're gonna cover this with plastic in the future. This is going to be a more traditional market garden style gardening here. Again, we want to really show the different styles of gardening, and so we want to be able to show a no-till market garden method here once we get rid of the thistles and a bunch of other weed seeds. And then as we walk back this way, we had plastic here all of last season. Really made a huge difference in the thistles and the weed seeds. And we are planting it this year in several different things. I've got sunflowers and a cover crop here. The caution tape is currently hopefully deterring birds a little bit. We like birds in the garden, but not when they're eating our seeds. And then we have sweet potatoes over here. But the long-term plan for this section of the garden is to be a outdoor cooking area for garden cooking demonstrations and to showcase more of a landscaped style garden. But for right now, it is growing our sweet potatoes and sunflowers, and we'll have more sunflowers succession sown under that plastic. Over here, this year, we have planted potatoes, and I'll show you a little bit about that. But our long-term goal here is we are going to have a cutting and strolling garden that will eventually be open to all of you to come explore and cut flowers from, and it will also be done in a landscape style. Right now we are working on the soil and also fitting crops in where we can fit them in as we plan and dream for the future. So we have several rows of potatoes here. You can see that they're coming up really well. This row has been hilled. This row hasn't, just because we got a cultivator that we wanted to test. We will come back and hill all of these pretty soon. I've been watching these, like with all of our crops, I monitor them for pests regularly. We have had quite a few flea beetles, but as long as our plants are healthy and have the nutrition they need, they will be able to outcompete the flea beetles. That is a cucumber beetle, and we don't like them at all. They are a major pest that we deal with, usually on our winter squash. So anytime I see one, I squish them, but you should never squish a bug in the garden until you know what it is. That's weird. They're on the potatoes, and there's a volunteer squash right here. Crazy bugs. Anyway, there are lots of good bugs to have in the garden, good insects, so always learn to identify a bug before you squish it. But one of the best methods for pest control in organic gardening is if you see a pest, squish it. So we will hill these potatoes and cultivate them. They're by no means no-till or no-dig potatoes. That's kind of hard to do, but we are working towards reducing tillage as we get our soil improved and figure out, you know, all of the details and all of the things. And then the rest of this field is going to continue to be field production even after we get the gardens established. We will have rotations of crops through here. This year we have winter squash and pumpkins planted here under row covers. So for organic squash production, we really struggle with the cucumber beetles I just showed you, also squash bugs. And what we have found to be the most effective is putting down row covers as soon as we plant and keeping them down until, well, as long as possible, but until the squash blossom. Once the squash blossom, we have to remove the row covers so that they can be pollinated. But we've also found that by that point in time, they can usually outgrow most of the pest pressure. But we do have, you can't really tell, but there's a lot of give in this fabric, so they'll be able to grow pretty big before this needs removed sometime in July. So that is how we are currently growing squash. I just saw a hole in this fabric though. The day that we put this first one down was super windy and we got a rip in the fabric, so I'm just covering that there. So that is our squash production. Some things that we are trying is interplanting cover crops to reduce weed pressure and tillage. Still figuring out what works best there. And then out in the big field, we'll be doing sunflowers, pumpkins, and cover crops this season. But mainly what I wanted to chat with you about was the gardens that we have and show you that, you know, we have our share of problems, pests, weeds, challenges, and there's no one size fits all solution to gardening. There's no one size fits all type of gardening style or method. It really comes down to the resources you have available, and that includes time, inputs, money, all kinds of things. But it also, you know, includes adjusting based on the problems that are coming up or the things that you as an individual grower are having to address. And so you can really learn a lot and study about a lot of great gardening methods. There's pros and cons to each, and you really need to find out what works for you, your lifestyle, your growing environment, your goals. And so we really hope to show you through these videos and through having visitors to our farm in the future, show you different gardening methods, show you what works and what doesn't work, the good and the bad, with our gardening as well, so that you can learn and hopefully be inspired and encouraged. So look for more videos like this in the future. These guys are just everywhere. That's awesome. Look for more videos in the future. Subscribe, like, share, and we hope to be posting pretty regular updates about our gardening methods and share more details with you in the future. and I can't wait to show you guys what this looks like. I can envision it in my mind, what this space is going to look like in a few growing seasons. I can't wait to share it with you. It's going to really be transformed, and it's going to become an amazing space for growing food, creating beauty, enjoying really good food, and connecting with people. We look forward to sharing the journey with you. Thank you, and God bless.